Hello, my name's Steve Ringer and welcome to Feeder Fishing. Right, today I've brought you to Packington Summers. We're on Gearys, which isn't actually a lake that I know a lot about. I fished it probably 2 or 3 times in my life, but what I do know is we're going to be carp fishing. We're going to be fishing for carp mainly. There's an odd F1 in here, there's some skimmers, but today's session's going to be geared all around carp. I've sat on peg 36, which I'm told is a good area. I'm sure the locals will tell me it's a flyer, but it's a peg I'm hoping to get a few pulls from, and one that gives me quite a few options. And what I think today is going to be about is, it's still cold, as you can see I'm in full winter gear. It's going to be about trying to nick a couple of fish. The fish are going to be on the move, I think. It's very shallow, this lake. I think from what I can remember, 3-4 foot on this peg in particular is going to be all I've got. Probably a lot less, looking at how my keep nets have gone in. So the fish are going to be really spooky. So it's all going to be all about those little tricks, just to get an odd bite. Going to be probably have to keep on the move, because I don't think the fish are going to settle. It's not going to be one of them summer days where you chuck out, put the rod down, and your rod's going to get dragged in. It's going to be about all those little tips and tricks that are going to get an odd bite, keeping on the move, and just to keep those fish coming. So that's my idea. Whether it'll pan out like that, we don't know. But before we start fishing, I'll just run you through the bait. As far as bait goes, keeping things really simple. Not got loads with me at all. I've got 2 sort of plans in my attack, but the second one will only come into use depending on how the first one goes, but I'll talk to you about that when we're on the actual box. So first things first, going to be fishing a little hybrid feeder. I'll talk to you about feeder size again once you start fishing, because I think that's really important, particularly at this time of year and on a venue like this that's very shallow. So we've got 2mm pellets. Now, anyone that knows Packington, particularly Gearys, will know it's a lake that is really coloured. It's still really cold at the minute, but Gearys holds colour all year round. And for me, that means that one of the carp's biggest ways of feeding, as in sight, is ruled out. So with that in mind, it's going to be more about smell. So my normal mix of pellets is basically 2 parts Ringer's Method micros. So like I'll do maybe like a pint of Ringer's Method micros, dry, to half a pint of the Dynamite F1 sweet. Now the Ringer's Method micros, really nice pellet, standard coarse pellet. Well, 2 or 3 pellets blended together. So they soak up plenty of water, easy to soak, and go on the feeder really nice. They haven't, however, got what I'd call like masses of smell. That's where the F1 sweet comes into its own. As you can see from the yellow colour, they're like soaked in a sweet liquid, obviously by Dynamite, quite pungent, and I feel got a lot of attraction. So normally it's 2 parts Ringers, 1 part of the Dynamite. But today, taking into account the fact this water is really, really coloured, I've gone 50-50. So if you can see them there in my hand, you can still see that you can see the Dynamite pellets against the Ringers, just slightly different colours. As in the Dynamite ones are yellow, the Ringers ones are still a little bit more natural, but they are going yellow because they're taking on that dye and taking on that flavour. But I just want a little bit more attraction in terms of smell. You know, the fish still aren't going to be coming to loads of bait, so I don't think I'm going to be able to attack it and get loads of fish feeding by continually chucking down one hole. So every time I cast out, I need my feeder to have as much attraction as I possibly can. In terms of soaking, obviously I've done the pellets already, in good old Blue Peter fashion, as I always say. All I do to soak my pellets is, today I've took 3/4 of a pint of the F1 sweet, 3/4 of a pint of the Method micros dry, tipped them into my bait strainer. This is before I left the house this morning. Then I've covered them with cold tap water for 55-60 seconds, totally submerged. After 60 seconds, pulled the strainer out, so to drain all the water off. Left them to stand for 5 minutes. Then I've literally just tipped them out into that bowl. I don't like to leave them in the strainer, the reason being the ones at the bottom get crushed and almost turn to paste. So 5 minutes to stand in there, tip the whole lot out like that, give them a good mix. Then I've driven to the venue, and I'm not going to lie, I've just had to tweak them a little bit. They're a little bit dried out. Just add a little bit of water by dipping my hand in, stirring it round, and now I've got what I'd call perfect pellets. So that's the pellets that are going to go on the feeder itself. I've also got with me a bag of 4mm Dynamite in the F1 Sweet again. The reason for F1 Sweet is just purely flavour. The really strong smelling, water's really coloured here, really sort of murky, muddy colour. I just think scent's going to be everything. So got a bag of them. What I might use them for, this is my plan. If it goes well, maybe 3.5 hours, nick an odd fish on the hybrid, chucking about, chasing them, just trying to keep in touch with the fish. And then with an hour and a half to go, if I think there's a few fish in the area, I've got a baiting up rod set up. And what I might do is put 3 or 4 feeders in a spot out the way, because I'm a bit low, the water being shallow, fish are going to spook. But what I might do is put 3 or 4 feeders out the way, just to drop on in that last half hour to see if I can nick a big bonus fish. So that's what the 4 mils are for. Hook bait wise, just got wafters pretty much in a variety of colours. Got an assorted tub of the new Ringers mini ones. They're supposedly like a 4 mil, but I'd say they're more of a 5 mil. Got them in pink, white, every colour you can mention. What I will say is coloured water for me means darker colour hook bait. So I'm thinking straight away fluoro pink, fluoro orange are going to be my number 1, 2. I just feel they give off a stronger silhouette. If the water was clear, I'd be thinking white and yellow. But the water's not clear at all, it's coloured. So I'm thinking pink and fluoro orange, they're going to be the 2 standout colours. Again, I've got them in the 4 mil, 6 mil, again assorted sizes. And obviously I've got a tub of yellows as well. And on my bait tray, I've also got some 10 mils. And I think the fish size wise is a little bit mixed. So what I'm thinking straight away is I'm going to start on small hook baits and then see how it goes. If I'm leaving the feeder out a bit longer, I might switch to 10 mils with the idea being to try and pick up a bigger fish. But I'm going to start off on a small hybrid feeder. So small feeder to me means small hook bait, just looks better. And first of all, I'm going to fish for a bite. So that's the theory. Let's see if we can put it into practice. Right, so as I said, we're on peg 36. It's not a peg I've ever fished before. Like I said, I don't know the lake very well. But one thing it has got is loads of options. And the obvious option is, for those that know Gearys, there's what they call the sticks. As you can see, probably a little bit to the right of the swim, there's a line of sticks. Now the carp tend to like the sticks. It's an obvious place to cast. And like a lot of people would probably start there on the end stick. But my thinking is, if I start there, I'm going to push the fish straight out my swim. You know, I mean, straight away when I look at this swim, I'm thinking there's possibly 2 areas to target straight away. One's the open water, maybe slightly to the left, but pretty much straight in front of me, and then that right-hand stick. So what I'm going to do is kick off in the open water, and then hopefully move to the stick, try and get 2 areas going, and almost bounce the fish back between them both. And that's the theory. What I will say as well is, I haven't cast out before the start. Water's still freezing. Yeah, it's got a bit of colour. I can't think of anything worse than crashing a bomb in to try and get clipped up to that stick or clipped up to where I want to be in open water. So the first cast we're going to make in a second is the first cast of the day. I can't stress enough how important it is, particularly on shallow waters like this, not to bombard the water with a bomb to put your clip on. It just scares the fish away. They'll go and find somewhere much quieter to sit. And on a day like today, I'm sat on my own on here. Those fish are going to want to, if they don't want to feed, which there's a chance they won't want to feed, they're going to back off. So I've got to make every cast count. So a little bit on that subject, feeder size. If it was summer, I'm thinking medium hybrid, 32 gram or 42 gram, depending on how far I want to chuck. And part of me still thinks that might be the best feeder. With the water being so coloured, a slightly bigger feeder might be the better way to go. But if I can catch on the little mini hybrids, I can't remember if they're called mini or small, which is terrible. I think they're mini. And obviously there's a new size in the range, part of the XD range, which is a 30 gram. So I've set 3 of them up at the minute. What I like about them is they're 30 grams, so I can cast them quite a long way. Equally, they don't hold much bait. So I'm not feeding lots of bait, and they go in a lot quieter than, say, a medium hybrid. So I'm thinking I can nick a few fish with them. But if I can't catch with these and I have to start what I'd call like leaving the feeder out a long time and wait for bites, then I'll up the feeder size. But my thinking at the start is keep disturbance to a minimum. I'm hoping there's going to be some fish out there. So start on a little mini hybrid, the 30 gram. It gives me plenty of range because of the weight. my thinking is I'm going to start straight in front of me, in line with that end stick, maybe just a little bit back this way. That gives me plenty of scope then to make a few moves during the course of the day. So loading the feeder, just going to wet my hand, put a little bit more water in there. I always have a tub of water by the side of me. There's two reasons for that. One, to test my wafters, to make sure they're sitting right, which that one's sitting beautifully. I want the wafter sitting up and the hook sitting down. Got it mounted on a little spike, if you can see that. I'll show, once I've got this out, I'll actually show you it properly. Hook length, while we're here, I might as well do that. 4 inches, 0.19 end gauge. I'm going to start on a size 12 QM1. I've got 14s, 12s and 10s with me, depending on fish size. I don't know enough about this water to know what the average fish is going to be. So I'm going to start on a 12. I don't believe in this colour a 12 is going to stop me getting bites. If I start catching some big fish, I'll probably up it to a 10, but let's not run before we can walk. So loading the feeder, just fill the base like so. I mean, just neaten it off. I like to fill the base pretty hard so I know they're staying in whatever happens. Hook bait on top, so it's like the cherry on top of the cake. Just a few more pellets to cover it. If you get your pellets right, you can put them on nice and hard and know they're still going to break down. Sometimes I use that little tub of water by the side of me just for checking that my pellets are behaving how I think they are. So there you go. So I'm just going to drop this straight in front of me, but sort of level with that stick, which I'd say is like 35, 40 metres. It's about perfect. I'm going to clip that up. There's no depth there whatsoever. It was literally on the bottom. I'm going to clip that up now, purely the way I like to do my winter carping, or even like, I don't know if you call this spring, because it doesn't feel like spring. If I can catch a fish, I'm just going to start the watch as well. The most important part of like this type of fishing is a watch, so I can time everything. I'm thinking this first cast, if no bites, 10 minutes, then I'm going to move. But if I get a bite, the reason I'm clipping up is if I get a bite, I want to go back to that spot. Carp don't tend to live on their own. So if I can get one in an area, then the chances are I can get two. But equally, if I don't get a sign on this chuck, all I'm going to do is feed 2-3 metres off and just move out. You know, basically the idea being looking for new water. With it being so shallow here, again, I'm guessing a little bit, but if there is some fish in front of me, I'd expect to get a few liners. I don't imagine it being like Boddington, whereby you just sit here like this and your rod gets towed in after 25 minutes having not moved before. Because there's some smaller carp in here and it's shallow, I'd expect if there is some fish out there, I'll start to get an odd sign. But I think 10 minutes for the first chuck. I think finding the fish is the most important part, location. So if I can find the fish, just to work out if that's a liner. There's a bit of tow on it, that is for sure. Just going to feed it a little bit of slack. Just try and keep that tip from ripping right round, just so I can see if there's any indications. Like I said, 10 minutes first chuck. Started on fluoro pink. I'm not going to chop and change hook baits until I'm getting some signs. If I'm not getting any signs, then chances are I'm not chucking in amongst any fish. So I'm going to stick with fluoro pink to start with, just purely on the basis. Water's coloured, and I think it gives off a strong silhouette. Got a little, you can see that, little bayonet on the band. Bayonet's tied on a band. Bayonet's tied into a little loop, just so it can pivot. Because what I want is the hook line flat on the bottom. If I just push this wafter in, push this bayonet into the wafter even. Like so, just, if you can just see that, you can just see that ring sticking out. What I want when I drop it in this tub and it sinks, hook line flat, wafter sitting up, which is exactly what that's doing. Just think, the way I imagine it is if your pellets are sitting on the bottom, that wafter then, because it's sitting up, is just going to peek through. So it's offering like almost a perfect presentation. It's just a little bit more visible. And I think that produces more bites. Like I say, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve today because I don't know the venue very well. But this swim does give me a lot of options, so I'm pretty confident at some point I am going to find some fish. Something else you might notice is I've got the hook baited, but I'm not making the feeder up. The reason being, the water temperature's still low, and one thing I've noticed, like doing a few tank tests, etc., if I make the feeder up and leave it in the bowl ready to go to save time, it slows the breakdown of the pellets down. It's almost like they form a seal, which in the summer when the water's warm is fine, because the warmer water temperature attacks the pellets, breaks them down really fast. But at this time of year, I want those pellets to break down pretty quick, particularly the second layer around my hook bait. So my hook bait's free. So rather than have, I'm not looking for loads and loads of bites, so I'm not wasting loads of time. So all I do is get the hook, get it baited, ready to go. When I reel in, clip it on. Oh, well, if I've got a fish, I'll make it up after I clipped it on. If this gets to 10 minutes and I haven't had a sign, literally 15 seconds before I'm going to reel in, just make it up. So it's not been made up long, you're avoiding that seal, and I know then when I cast out, that within like, oh, is that a sign? Bit of a, definitely a sign. It looked more of a, I haven't got it by the way, it looked more of a skimmer bite, but definitely a fish sign. It was sort of like rocking back and forth rather than heading for the hills. I'm going to switch feeders anyway, just purely on the basis that I did have a bite, and I'll probably change that hook bait. Again, it only takes seconds to make this up. That was definitely a sign, but my gut instinct is it didn't look like a carp. I'm going to go back to the same spot because where there's fish, there's often other fish. So I'm probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 metres short of the line of the sticks, but it's a nice place to start. Restart that watch. Just check that off there. So yeah, my plan now is fish this, see what happens this chuck. Hopefully we'll get a carp, or at least a fish. What I would say is, like, I'm trying to catch carp. If you're fishing a match here, carp wins the match. You don't, unless it's a silvers match, obviously, but you don't win many matches here with skimmers without carp. So while to get myself off the mark, it's like this hell of a wind blowing, I'm quite happy to catch a few silvers. Oh, I don't think that's definitely not a skimmer, I don't think. That's a really quick bite, but that sort of shows the merits for me of that little tiny feeder. I'm trying to nick bites with this feeder rather than, like, I'm not trying to feed the swim. It's not a big carp. Might be an F1. But it's a nice start. It's nice to get a fish. I always think your first 25 minutes, half an hour is really important, because if you can get off the mark quite quick, your whole rest of your session becomes a lot easier. What I don't like is having to chase too early. Well, if like after half an hour, 40 minutes, you've already moved 3 times, you're running out of options. So I'm hoping this is going to be a sign of a decent day. Because the water's so shallow, they're quite awkward to play. Presuming it's a little carp. Oh. Yeah, a little mirror. Little mirror, but a nice start. Stunning little fish. Oh, it's a common. Shows what I know. Looked like a mirror. Probably £2. I'm presuming, looking at this, that he's put some stockies in. Just plop that feeder in and I'll hold him up for you. He's put some stockies in because that's a beautiful little common carp. Probably £2, but it feels like a block of ice, which just tells me how cold that water temperature is. So I'm going to pop him in the net and get back out. Right, had that quick fish. Obviously missed a bite first chuck, quick fish. Had a little indication third chuck. Fourth chuck landed bang on the money, but I've given it 16 minutes just to see. I'm not getting any real liners. It's not moved, and straight away I'm thinking I'm not chucking in amongst loads of fish. And I'm a massive believer that location is everything this time of year, and they're not going to move to me. So what I'm going to do now is going to make this ball up. I'm just going to put 3 meters, take 3 meters off and go 3 meters further, just to see. It's not like a massive move, but I feel like I'm not chucking in amongst any fish at the minute. Certainly not any feeding fish. And 3 meters isn't far, but the fact I've already had one little carp suggests to me that there was some carp in the area. So to take 3 meters off, reel to butt is roughly 50 centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that should, or that will, allow me to go 3 meters past where I've been fishing, just to see if I've just pushed the fish a little bit further. What I'll do is I'll have, well, let's have one chuck there first. But in my mind, I'm thinking 2 chucks, maybe slightly different angles, so slightly left, slightly right. And then if no signs, I'm going to open up another swim on that first stick. You know, you can't help looking at that stick. There's a gravel bar there, feeling like it should hold some fish. But first of all, let's go three meters past. So that's gone in. I feel like I've got nothing really to base this on other than that first bite. But I feel like if I'm going to get a bite, it's going to be pretty fast, purely down to the fact it's really shallow. And I feel like if I land on the fish, I should get a fairly instant response. I mean, that might be totally wrong, but that's what I'm thinking at the minute. Like that last chuck, I left it sort of 16 minutes and nothing. It feels like almost the longer it's, once you get past sort of 5 minutes, even though I'm only 3 casts in, I feel like it's not going to go. But that might be because of the fact I'm just fishing in open water. When I go to that stick, I might, because there's a bit of a feature there, perhaps be a little bit happier leaving it longer there. Equally, if I can't find any fish on these little feeders, then I will pick up the medium. If I'm going to leave it a bit longer, I'd rather leave it with a little bit more bait around it. But we're only 35, 40. Oh. I think it might be a skimmer. It just shows you even 3 meters and it's produced an instant bite. It could be a skimmer, it might be a stocky. That's what I mean about how important location is though. You think on a windy day like today, even though it's cold, the fish wouldn't spook, but with it being so shallow, they're just so easy to spook. Thinking it must be a skimmer, the way it's coming in. But again, quick bite, 1 minute, 20 seconds. And I honestly believe had I sat where I was fishing, I wouldn't have caught this fish. Is it a skimmer? Yeah. Not the target species, but pound and a bit. Oh. On the pink, bottom lip, perfect or cold. Drop him in. I mean, there is a reasonable head of skimmers in this lake, so I'm not surprised to catch a few. Let's make this feeder up. What I will say as well is I'm not trying to cast on a sixpence either. I'm clipped up, but I'm casting to an area. Purely on the basis, I'm not looking to put a load of bait in at the minute and hold fish over it. Go back to that same spot. One of the reasons I've started that bit shorter as well is you tend to find, particularly early in the session, maybe the first 2.5, 3 hours, it's difficult to come back on yourself. The fish won't come inside of your line. That last hour they might if they want to feed. But early in the session, you're basically chasing the fish out and to the sides. I'm going to stick with the fluoro pink. Later on in the session, like I would expect a few fish, that's a bit hard, to feed. And if they feed, then maybe I'll be able to put some bait in and come back on myself. Sitting perfect. But it just feel like if I can get on the fish, the response is going to be fairly instant. The problem is you've got to work out how many moves you've actually got. Oh, another fish, that's a carp. Like I was saying, you've got to work out how many moves you've actually got, because if you go chasing too early, all of a sudden you're out of moves, fish are out the boundaries of your swim, and you're going to be struggling. So sometimes in a match situation, I'll have to reduce, like I have to stay short that little bit longer to maybe let other people push the fish into my swim. I mean, this time of year, I just think all the fish are looking for is safe water, which is one of the reasons these little feeders are so good, is in I can cast a long way with them, pick fish off, but with very little disturbance. This one feels, might be wrong, but a better fish. But that's literally 2 casts, 20 minutes, not a sign, 3 meters off. A skimmer and possibly a carp if I can get this one out. But like I said, I'm going to have to be a little bit patient because I don't want to push the fish out of the swim. Because there's always this temptation, say if I have 2 chucks now and it doesn't move, you want to move again, and then it happens again and you want to move, and before you know it, you're 2 hours in and you're at the limit of your swim. So you've got to be a little bit patient. Sometimes you've got to work your angles left and right. Feels a decent fish. Plane coming over. And the rain's starting again. As you can see, the weather's fairly testing, shall we say. I think it's because the water's shallow. Fish tend to fight a bit harder because they can only go out. They can't come back on themselves. Just kited off to the left. Certainly feels bigger than £2 anyway. Leader's just hit the ring. I'll talk to you about my setup a bit later on, but I'm using a shot leader. It's just got in the ring, so the fish is pretty close now. Got a couple of turns on the reel. Oh, it's a ghosty. You can see all the mud coming up. See how shallow the actual water is? There we go. That's a better fish. I reckon, cool, he's an old warrior. Definitely. He's doing a lot of fighting in the net. Probably, don't know, £6, £7. Pop him in. I'll hold him up quick, but he's not got the best mouth, shall we say. It's definitely been in here a while, that one, but a welcome addition. Oh, watch that spare rod. That's the sort of stamp of fish I'm hoping to catch, but when it's this cold, a bite is a bite, as they say. Oh, that fish is really, the 2 fish I've caught, well 3 if you can count the skimmer, freezing on the hands. But again, that was another quick bite, so I'm already building a bit of a pattern up, as in there doesn't seem a lot of mileage in like casting it out and just leaving it. So what I'm thinking now, I'm always trying to think ahead. Oh, it's caught on the clip. What I'm thinking now is, well, unless if this lasts, great, but I imagine it won't. Oh, watch that keep there. I'm gonna have to start thinking about sort of left and right. Don't want to go too far right because that sticks there, and that still forms quite a big part of my plans. That's my sort of banker spot. I'm hoping like I can catch a few in front of me, and then maybe they'll move to that stick because they'll feel safe there. Then I'll be able to pick them off, at which point they might drop back into the open water. Then I can just alternate the 2 spots. But we'll have to see how it pans out, so to speak. So I'm going to stick with the only way I'd chop and change my hook bait is if I wasn't getting signs and no bites. So stick with the size 12 for the minute. Let's fish that little bit of silicone on the hair. It's important to make sure that's pulled right round so everything sits nice. That's sitting perfect. Just tighten that back up. And we'll see what happens. So rather than 10 minutes, I think I'm going to give it 6, just for a couple of chucks, just to see. I can always start leaving it out again, but the fact is, I've had 3 bites, 3 definite bites now. All of them have been inside 3 minutes. So there's a pattern, as in, I think if I can find the fish and get on them, I'm going to get a really fast response. So I don't want to be wasting loads of time just sat there trying to bore one on when in reality I can't because my feeder's not in amongst the fish. So let's see what happens. So, just had that nice ghosty last time we spoke. Went back out, nothing. Went to the left, went to the right, nothing. Went to the left, got a skimmer. Just come back straight in front of me and just had a little stocky, probably, don't know, £1.5, £2. I thought I'd have a 10-minute chuck because, like I said, I didn't want to be chasing too quick. And there's a danger, like, because chasing can become really good, that you just want to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And like I said, before you know it, you've run out of moves. So I just thought I'd be a bit more patient, and like I say, that little mirror, only £1.5, £2, but just dragged the rod in. No indication, so like, I'm not lining to death or chucking in a big ball of fish. Just feels like I'm either on the edge of the fish or they're just not balled up. And what I'm going to do, if this doesn't go this chuck, I'm going to give it 10, but if it doesn't go, so I've been left, been right, I had a little skimmer to the left, right didn't even move, which surprised me a bit, because I sort of went on what I'd consider my limit without interfering with that stick where I want to be a bit later on. I went back to the main spot, and like I said, just didn't bore it on because it was only 7 minutes, which isn't a long bite when you consider how cold it is. But I don't feel where I'm chucking at the minute I'm going to get one a chuck. That wind's turned round now and is smacking my face as well, which isn't ideal. So what I'm thinking, I've got 2 options next. First one is just to go a little bit further again, I'm thinking 2 meters rather than 3, just to try and maximise my moves. If I can move less and still get the same response, then that has to be good. So I try a 2 meter move, and also I can open up that swim to the stick. I don't know whether that's going to be as good as perhaps I thought it was at the start. I'm not sure, but it's definitely an area worth chucking. I haven't seen any fish moving along those sticks, but then I haven't seen any fish moving anywhere. Like I say, it is really cold. I say since that wind's turned around as well, the temperature's dropped, feels as though it's dropped. But what I'm going to do, I think, is give this chuck, I feel like I need to give it 10 because I caught a fish last chuck, and then either open up the stick. I mean, I've got other water as well. There's a nice line, because like this is, the peg I'm on is on a point, and literally there's not any pegs to the right are right round the corner facing a different way. So I've got another line there, but again, I don't really want to chuck into that just yet. We're only an hour and 15 minutes in, and I've had 1 decent carp, 2 little carp, 2 skimmers, so we're hardly at desperate times scratching for bites. I think it's just the nature of the fact quite a few of the bites have been fast. So I feel like if I could find a ball, I could catch 4 or 5 really quick. But it might just be one of those days where, because there's no one else that I can see on the lake, the fish are going to keep on the move. I'm just going to try and have to stay in touch with them. Tell you what we'll do. That's been out 3 minutes 40. I think rather than moving this time on this line, I'm going to pick up the other rod and open up that the stick, just to see. Because if I could get 2 spots going, that would be brilliant. I don't know whether it's going to be that sort of day. My gut instinct is it probably isn't. But there is 2 distinct parts of the swim. There's the stick where the gravel bar is, and then to the left got open water. Then I've also got a bit of open water that way, should I need to chuck in it. It also gets deeper that way. And I don't think I'm in any 3 foot maximum where I'm chucking now. Whereas as you go towards what they call the dam that way, I think there's 5 foot perhaps close in on the dam line. So in theory it must be going a bit like that, so the fish might feel a bit more comfortable in slightly deeper water. It's all sort of speculation though. I'm surprised I know it's freezing, but with this wind on, I'm surprised I've not seen any fish moving. But that, not just in front of me, I haven't seen any moving the whole lake. I'm surprised I haven't seen an odd one just crash out. But the fish I have caught don't half feel cold to the touch. So I think what I'll do, I'll give this another minute, and then I can make the move while I'm talking to you. So I've got another rod there, not clipped up. I could use this rod, it's probably not far off, but I'd rather have 2 rods for 2 different spots, rather than sort of trying to compromise and make 1 rod do everything. Like the distance I'm at now, if I came round towards the stick, don't think I'd be far off it. But I'd rather keep this rod in exactly the same position, so I know when I come back to the open water line, I'm probably going to have 1 chuck back on the original spot to see if anything's settled after the lull. Then I can start moving again. So in effect, I've got like an open water rod and a stick rod. So let's make this up. It's definitely not getting any warmer. Right, 5 seconds. So let's just redo that. It just wasn't quite sitting right. I mean, it's definitely not solid where I'm chucking at the minute, and I don't think it's going to be solid by that stick, but it just looks nice. And I know in the past, although apparently they haven't been producing loads of fish lately, them sticks do hold fish. Sometimes the bigger fish tend to sit there as well. That wind is seriously getting up. Right, let's put that one down. So this one's not clipped up at all. So I'm going to try my best. I'm not looking to hit the stick. I don't believe every fish is like literally rubbing against that stick. It's quite a tough chuck in this wind as well. That wasn't bad. Literally, there's no count as I expected. It's probably even shallower there. I reckon that actually I need to clip that up. And that's probably a metre and a half short. But for a starting point, quite happy with that. I'd say whether there's any fish there is going to be debatable. But it's certainly like worth a chuck. It's a fish holding area and also gives me a chance to sort of rest that open water line. Because I don't want to keep just moving through that open water, because before you know it, I'll just be out of room. And it might be, I just need to be a bit more patient. I'm going to give this chuck, I think I'll give this chuck 10 minutes. Because I feel like by that stick, that's where there should be some better carp, so I might have to be a bit more patient. I don't mind waiting 10 minutes if there's going to be a 6 to 8 pound or even a double figure fish, because there's plenty of them in here. And I'm in totally new water now. So if those fish that were in front of me have moved slightly right along that stick line, I should be back in amongst them. And my gut instinct is they might not have moved right, they've gone, they're in front of me and they've just gone further. So they're moving along the stick line, but sort of 20 metres off them. But we'll see what happens. It was definitely worth a chuck to the sticks, and like I say, I've got another line there if I need it. But I'll probably have, if this doesn't go, I'll have another chuck to the stick, maybe slightly to the, I've gone pretty much straight at it. Probably go slightly to the left next chuck. And if that doesn't move, I'll go straight back to the open water. And I'll leave the stick as one of them places I can just dob in as and when. It's obviously not solid there because it hasn't gone straight round. But I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it 10 minutes. I'm going to have 2 10-minute chucks, that's 20 minutes. I don't, because even if it doesn't go, I don't think it's 20 minutes wasted. I just think it's 20 minutes to rest the main swim. So I'll update you shortly. Well, first chuck to the post produced absolutely nothing. Second chuck, dead on. It basically just after 5 minutes. Lovely big pull round, just out the blue. To be honest, I was just starting to think maybe the posts look good but don't produce much. Was it to do with the depth or whatever? And it's just gone round out the blue. Like I say, I think after them early fish, perhaps just going to have to be a little bit more patient. Actually, this is one of them fish, as I got it closer, it started to feel a little bit bigger. Felt like an F1 or something to start with. Right now it doesn't feel huge, but it's not really kicking. Oh, it's just kicked then. So it's so shallow, the water though. But the first chuck I sort of went dead out the post. That second chuck was just to the left. I mean, if I say so myself, it landed perfect. I couldn't have sort of placed it any better. But it just didn't, sometimes you get a feel, and I didn't really see that one going round. Just purely for the fact there was just no indications there. It's a nice comment. There we go. I did expect it to be slightly bigger fish if I got one by the stick. Probably, don't know. Let's have a look. Oh, he's a little bit lively. A lot cleaner fish than the ghosty as well. Don't really want to throw him back. He's gone into, well, I don't want to be picked up mode. So probably £5, but a nice start. So I've probably got probably got £15, and we're only hour and 40 in. So bear in mind, I'd have been happy today with like anything over 30. We've got every chance of making that. So I'll pop him in the net, see if we can repeat it. Okay, so it's safe to say it's slowed up somewhat. I had I've got that decent. Oh, I was saying it's slowed up. We're in. Just to update you, I had that fish, that common sort of £5 off the sticks, and then I had a skimmer next chuck. Then another chuck with nothing. Went back in front of me to the original spot. 6 minutes cast, nothing. 3 meters off, chucked it out. 7 minutes, just had a stocky. And I've just gone back to the same spot, putting the bait on really hard. There's hell of a tow on now. And I'm sort of convinced when it's towing, you've got to put the bait on hard. You've got to make sure there's some bait around that feeder so that when a fish comes in, you've got some attraction. And on literally, 3 minutes, it's had a big drop back. Just goes to show again the importance of moving. Those fish, I'm just literally pushing those fish along. I've been toying with the idea, because I think I'm going to have to be more patient of upping the feeder size. If I'm going to leave it out longer, because that wind is relentless. If I'm going to leave it out longer, I think I want a bit more bait around the feeder. But as I've literally just had 2 bites in 2 chucks, I'm loath to do that just yet. It's a nice fish. Let's get him in the net. Nice common, probably £5. That was a quicker bite, but just feel like patience is going to be important now. Still on the fluoro pink 6 mils. Probably £5 that one. But that's like, if I can get him out of the net. 2 quick fish. Having had like a 40-minute lull. 2 really quick fish. All right, one's a stocky. But that seems to be the pattern. Move, 2 bites, and then nothing. Just seems continually chucking to the same spot is the kiss of death. So it's really important to keep on the move, but sort of get your timings right, move at the right times. Again, I'm putting the bait on really hard. Just want to make sure that there is some bait around the feeder all the time. Having to cast it really hard and low, because the wind's pretty much not far straight at me now. So I'm having to like really sort of try and power it under the wind, just letting go of it a fraction late. So it's cutting under the wind a bit. You know, I'm not trying to chuck it on a 6-punch, as I've said. I'm just trying to fish sort of an area. I'm lining up with a peg on the other bank. That seems to be the line, which is, I don't know, good 20 metres, no, probably not, 15 metres to the left of that end stick. But realistically, the one thing that has worked today is the move. Nothing else has been anywhere near as good as just 3 metres off and move. I say I've still got a couple of moves in me, but I want to maximise each one. So I don't want to be moving like every chuck or every other chuck. And I still think sitting nice. There's a chance of a fish, and I'd fish off them sticks all the time, but it definitely seems the fish prefer to be in the open water. And I don't know the place well enough to be sure on this, but I'm presuming it's a gravel bar by them sticks. It's possibly slightly shallower, and with it being so cold, I'm thinking maybe the fish just don't want to be in that shallow water. Also, there's no pressure on the lake. From what I can see, I'm the only person mad enough to be sat here. So the fish are free to sit where they want, whereas in a match situation, them sticks are pretty much the middle marker. So I should imagine the fish sit on those sticks just to get out of the way. It's a bit of cover, something they can sort of feel safe by. Whereas on a day like today, they can pretty much go anywhere and be out of the way. But I think what I'm going to do, let this chuck fish, and if I don't get a bite of this chuck, I'm just going to swap. That's your 30. That's the little mini I'm on now, mini 30 gram. I'm going to swap that for a 32 medium and chuck it to the sticks again and be more patient. I feel as if I'm going to leave it out 15, even 20 minutes for a carp. The way this water's towing, I need a bit more bait around the feeder. So like, I'll just try next body size up. Well, it's 2 body sizes up, to be fair, that one. Put a bit more bait in and just sit and wait. And if they're £5 a piece and you get a bite every 15, 20 minutes, that's fine. With it being this cold, I was never going to sack up and catch £100. It's more a case of working hard for every fish. Like I say, I think this little feeder is brilliant for what I'm doing at the moment, but sometimes a change can be as good as a rest. I just feel like bigger feeder, chuck it to that stick, just have one cast on it. If it doesn't go, I can soon switch back again. I'm not doing any harm to it. I've still got some potential as well that way, which I haven't touched on yet, but I didn't really want to go there too early. I mean, the good thing is, although the stick hasn't produced great, I've had bites out of 2 different areas, so I have got 2 spots that have got potential. I feel like that swim there, the longer I can leave it, the more chance there might be a few fish in it. And there's every chance there won't be anything, but it's going to be new water when I go there. And I've just noticed my towel's blown in. So I'm going to leave you while I get my towel back. And hopefully when I come back, I'll get my towel dry and we'll have another fish on. Well, the first time today, got 3 and 3. Cool. That wind is, it's only another stocky. That was 11 minutes, that bite. Like I say, still on the small feeder, but a little bit more patience. I actually had an indication before it as well, so I feel like that latest move, £2 again. Maybe I found a few fish. Like I say, a little bit more patience now. The swim sort of, we've got over that initial little burst. Oh, great, just got him. The wind is like, I think not good is the best way to describe it. That's the first time today I've had 3 bites from the same spot. Well, the same clip, if you know, that makes sense, same distance. Get those pellets on nice and hard. Obviously I'm going to go back there because why wouldn't you? There's a shoal of fish. I had an indication as well. Again, I think putting these pellets on really hard in this toe is important. It's pretty good. I wouldn't have said it was perfect, but in chucking into this headwind, it's hard to be perfect. But no, I do feel patience is vital now. I'm going to fish 15-minute chucks. I'm going to stick. While I'm getting bites, I'm loath to change. I mean, I don't personally believe I'm going to catch faster by changing. So although I've got that medium body size hybrid out, I'm not going to change to it. While we're chatting though, one question I get asked a lot, perhaps I've never really covered, is like any regular watchers of this EMAG will notice, well, you don't see me fishing a method feeder. And like a few people have said, why don't you fish a method? So that's not quite sitting right. That one's just sitting a bit high. The reason for that is, for me, it's all about presentation. I just feel a hybrid offers better presentation. And also because of the bowl, as in it is like a bowl shape, I think it protects the bait better, particularly on the cast. And when it's as windy as this, and the feeder doesn't always land, that's better, perfect. I always think with a method you can knock all your bait off on the surface, and you could be sat there, I don't know, 10-15 minutes with very little bait around your feet, around your hook bait, so your chances of a bite are diminished. With a hybrid, because you've got the bowl, worst case, I'm putting the first layer in really hard, particularly today, because of the amount of tow on the water. When it's like that, worst case scenario, I knock the top off, as in the second layer of pellets. I've still got that bait in the bowl, so I've still got some attraction around my hook bait, and I just feel it protects it better. Better presentation, better protection. There's nothing not to like about a hybrid. And that's why I'd say 99.9% of my carp feeder fishing now is done with a hybrid feeder. Oh, we're in again. It's only a small fish, I think. 2 minutes, that bite. Yeah, the only time I can think that I'd maybe want to fish a method is possibly to get more bait in. One thing I will say about a method is they do hold more bait than a hybrid. But part of me thinks if that was the scenario, I'd just chuck more often with a hybrid. But it is personal preference. Most people watching this will know, for instance, Adam Mooney. He's the complete opposite to me. Rarely fishes a hybrid, just prefers a method because he feels it's more versatile. So it's very much a confidence thing. I just believe with a hybrid, it's a skimmer, hell of a bite for a skimmer. With a hybrid, I'm fishing more effectively. And that's particularly in the cold, £1.5 that one. The confidence of thinking you're fishing more effectively makes a big difference, especially if you're going to leave the feeder out. That's the other thing. I spend a lot of time at Boddington. Sometimes you're leaving it out 45 minutes a cast. You've got to believe, if you're going to leave it out that long, that you're fishing effectively. Because if you're not, you get all sort of things playing around in your mind. Next thing you know, you're reeling it in. As you can see there, I'm really pushing hard as well to make sure that bait, that first layer is going to stay in for a little bit longer. So yeah, that's the reason, for those wondering. Let's try and get this on. Again, I'm giving it probably an extra squeeze to what I normally would on the top as well. It's definitely not doing any harm, and I've got my pellets pretty much perfect, so I know they're always going to bounce off the feeder. Pretty much on the money. I'd bet money that was a carp as well. It was a proper, it sort of dropped back and then pulled round. It could be I've just been a little bit short of where the fish are, but I'd always rather have been a little bit short and move on to them than maybe nick. It's better to nick a couple of extra fish, but maybe take longer to do it, and then still get a run at the main shoal, which is hopefully what I'm going to get either now or a little bit later on. Still on the size 12 QM, so I don't feel I'm missing out on anything. Sitting perfect. It is really cold. I can't, considering obviously a couple of weeks ago it was really mild for this time of year. The wind chill today is bitter, which I think is probably affect, particularly on a lake like this that's really shallow. It's got to affect the fishing, but we are getting a few bites, and that's the important part. seems like I found a pocket of fish. I think I've had 7 fish in 7 casts now. Right, five of them stockies, 2 skimmers, waiting anything from sort of minute and a half to sort of 8-9 minutes for a bite, but I'm getting bites. It's amazing when you think about it though. Like, these are all down one spot, but I was literally 3 meters off the fish and one won't move to the bait before, when I couldn't get a sign. It's a bit bigger than I thought. Of a ghosty. That just goes to show how important, to me, location is. If you can be just away from the fish and they're not going to move, probably not as big as I thought, probably 5 pounds. But they're not going to, if I could get the hook out, they're not going to move to the bait. You've got to go to them. So obviously I've dropped on a pocket now. I don't believe these fish are now, like, come into the bait. It's just the fact I was obviously just a little bit short of them. And they're literally lying there balled up. So sure, might as well have been in a different lake as be 3 meters away from them. That's like 8 bites, 8 chucks. Yeah, I'm being a bit more patient, but I haven't had to change anything else. Possibly I wasn't putting the pellets on hard enough early as well, because there's a big toe on, which you'd expect on a shallow water. And like I said, I do feel the toe can wash your pellets away if you're not careful. You know, I'll be surprised if this lasts till the end of the session, but if it does, obviously it'll be nice. Still having to punch it really low just to get it to go nice and straight and accurate. Just alternating. There's a peg up. I don't know what the peg number is opposite me. Just basically left, right, or straight on it. I'm not trying to get it back in exactly the same spot every time, as long as the distance is right. I haven't had to change that. You know, I talked about that bigger feeder, but I haven't had to change to it yet. I'm also getting to that stage whether I want to put some bait somewhere. And I talked to you at the start about maybe putting a feeding feeder on and dropping some bait in short. I have to admit, it doesn't seem, I'm not saying I won't do it, but we've only got literally like an hour and a half to go of a 5-hour session. And the fact is I'm catching, so I'm loath to change anything. And with this bitter cold wind in my face, I don't personally see, not quite sure where I'd put the bait. Thought about there's a tree round to my right, maybe on the end of that tree. I don't know. With a cold wind hacking down there, I'm not sure there'll be any fish there. Equally, I could put it 20 metres in front of me, but again, the fish aren't 20 metres in front of me, they're further out. One thing I will mention, a lot of people say about, when you start to catch, rest in the swim. This time of year, well, any time of year to be honest, I'm a massive believer in you take the fish when they're there. You know, I could come off, this could die any second, like not through something I've done, just through the fact the fish want to move, etc. You're much better off taking the fish while they're there, put them in your net. If you try and rest it and be clever sometimes, you'll find you can come off them when you catch in, rest it for 20 minutes, I think that'll keep the swim, and you go back, they're gone. So I'm just a massive believer, when you find fish, catch them, and if it dies, you'll have to look for them again. And if it dies, I'll quite happily rest it, quite happily move, but while I'm getting bites, I'm going to stay on that spot. Don't get the coming off it to keep them coming for longer, because there's every chance when you go back that they won't be there anymore. So it's really just a case now, just keep putting fish in the net. No, with it being so cold, I don't personally think I could catch faster. You know, I don't think there's anything gained at the minute by changing anything. If the bite time starts to get slower and slower, then I'll look to move, because we're getting late in the session, just to see if I can catch faster again. It could be as I've picked off like, 8 fish in 8 casts. The fish were here and so I'm only on the edge of them again. So moving another 3 meters could just put me back in contact. and it might enable me to catch that little bit faster. I certainly don't think I'd lose the fish by going another 3 metres, because throughout the day, whenever I've moved, it's paid dividends straight away. One thing I haven't mentioned, which I did say I would, while we're waiting for, let me straighten that rod rest up, while we're waiting for a bite, is my actual setup. Rod's an 11-foot SLR. You know, a rod I helped design. But what I love about the 11-foot in particular, it's so versatile. I could drop it 20 metres with it, or 10 metres, and I can chuck it 70, 80. So it saves me having to set lots of different rods up to do different things. Casters and reel. Big reel, yeah, but I just like big reels. It feels right on the SLR to me. I wouldn't put it on an 11-foot tournament, but it just feels right on that SLR. I loaded it with 6-pound pulse, and then I'm fishing a 12-pound tournament ST leader. I just think shot leader, why wouldn't you? It makes casting a lot easier, less chance of a crack off or a breakage when you're with a 12-pound leader. The other thing I like when I'm fishing shot leaders, and one of the reasons I fish them so often, particularly when you're carp fishing, when you're playing them, as soon as I hear that leader knot go through the rings, I know exactly where the fish is. When you're not using a leader, for instance, sometimes when you're playing them with the rod down low, it can be very difficult to know where the fish is. Well, as soon as I hear that leader knot, I can basically 4 or 5 turns, lift the rod, and I know that pretty much that fish is going to be in netting position. So I think a leader allows me to fish more efficiently, as well as making casting a lot easier. So as far as I'm concerned, it's sort of a win-win situation. The only downside to a leader that I see would be, say, if you were fishing up to snags or something like that, where you might get snagged and you have to pull for a break. One of the issues with using a shot leader is, if you are in a snaggy swim and you have to pull for a break, you're going to lose the lot. But on a commercial, that pretty much you're rarely going to be faced with that scenario, if ever. So I'm already actually starting to think that I'm waiting a little bit longer for bites. And this has been out 5.5. So I'm going to give it till 7. I'm going to give it till 10, but after 7, I'm going to take another 3 metres off, then just put it back down and let it fish again. Just to see, because we are getting down to that last sort of hour and 25, if I can just catch a little bit faster. I don't want to be wasting too many chucks now. Like the last chuck went, but it had to wait a little bit longer, and it feels like not getting any indications now. So I found a ball, and obviously I probably dispersed them and spooked them a little bit. It's just a question now whether whether a move will be good enough just to find them. If not, still got that stick, I've still got that line that I've talked about lots and not fished. Like I say, in the next if I was going to feed a short line, got to do it in the last 20 minutes, but next 20 minutes to give it time to settle, time for a fish. But I have to be honest and say I'm not feeling it, and the way the swim hasn't responded to like repetitive casting to the same spot, so the fish haven't wanted to come and feed over any amount of bait. So that suggests to me like boshing a big feeder in full of pellets. I can't see it buying me. It might buy me a bite in the last 5 minutes, but I've probably got just as much chance of getting that bite where I am anyway. So it's something I'm going to think about, but at the minute my gut instinct is I don't see the mileage in it. It's just not quite warm enough at the moment. And it's not like, if I was desperate, as in like I couldn't catch anything, then I'd be more inclined to do it, thinking I'll put some baiting out the way, last 20 minutes it might just get me out of jail. But I don't feel that like I'm desperate to catch. I've had enough bites on my other lines to make me think I've got it pretty much right at the moment. So that's 7 minutes. So what I'm going to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to put me another 3 metres. And what I'll do, let this fish for another 2, because it's nearly at the end of this. It's just coming up to 8 minutes. Then I'll have one chuck straight away back out there. And if it doesn't go, I'm going to switch to that medium feeder and have a chuck at the stick. Purely if I feel like a bigger fish might come from around that area. And then if I'll have literally one chuck there, if it doesn't go, back to this line and then reevaluate. But there's no doubt the open water's been my best line by far. Yes, I haven't spent loads of time by the stick, but that's because when I went there, it wasn't really, there wasn't enough action there to keep me there. There's definitely more fish in the open water, so. Gonna give this one more minute, then I'll be 3 meters further, and fingers crossed, that'll produce an immediate response. And literally, obviously when I left you, is it a skimmer? No, a little carp. I didn't have a bite of that chuck. I just took them 3 meters off at 7 minutes, left it 10, never moved. First chuck, straight back out, obviously 3 meters past. And another strange hook hold, very strange hook hold, top lip. Another 2 pound little stocky, which I think just goes to prove the biggest lesson today has been you can't sit and wait for the fish. You've got to find them, move to them, catch them and then move again. And that last bite, right, took 4 minutes, but it's not a long time considering the 10 minutes the chuck before, no sign at all. See if I can get back out there in this lovely wind. Perfect. Probably one of the best chucks of the day, actually, if I say so myself. Like I was saying, just right moving, making your moves at the right time is also really important. Because there's always this temptation, once you've had a good move, as in you move and you catch, that you just think, gotta move again, and then all of a sudden it stops working or you run out of room. I feel like I've been really disciplined today, and I think another point is if you're going to be chasing, the little feeder's massively important. I think because it goes in that little bit softer, a little bit quieter, it's less likely to spook the fish, so I'll probably get 2 or 3 more bites of the cherry. I feel like I can have more casts as well with a little feeder. Whereas with a big feeder, I've pretty much got to chuck it, let it hit the bottom, make it count, and almost wait until it goes, because I can't really afford to keep casting with a big feeder. Whereas this little one, I can explore the swim a lot better, which is what today's really been about. You know, I mean, I expected the stick to be better, but got over an hour to go still, so that stick could still prove important. A few fish might have just drifted down there. That's where I'm going to sort of have my little gamble as such. And all I'm going to do, great thing about the X-Safe, I can just pop that stem out the mini feeder straight into the medium 32, pull it into place, use my teeth, but hey, it helps if you line the thing up at the bottom. There you go. And I'm fishing again, just change bodies. I don't have to get a new stem out, change the hook length, etc. Then when I want to change back, just pop the stem out and drop it back to the mini. But I'm going to try the medium just to see, be nice to finish with a couple of bigger fish. And if this was a match situation, I'd be thinking, I've had quite a few bites, but I haven't got masses of weight. Like an 8 pound fish would make a massive difference to the catch at the end of the day. And it might be there's just not any big fish feeding. It's just so cold. But it's worth a look. Just doing something different. Oh, is that on? Yeah. So that's 2 in 2 again on the move. What's that, 2.5 minute bite? Really slow bite that was. Almost like a line bite. Doesn't feel like a stocky, this one. Doesn't feel massive either, but it feels like 4 or 5 pound fish. Stayed on that size 12, purely for the fact I haven't seen, probably going to jinx it now, but I haven't lost a fish all day. I've only had that one bite at the start, which I thought was on, which wasn't. So I just stuck with it. And, you know, I honestly do think I could have fished a 10 and had exactly the same amount of bites. But while things are good, I'm not someone who changes things just for the sake of it. So, I mean, I'm like tempted by that stick, but while I'm getting bites, doesn't seem any need to chuck there. I could try and, if it was warmer, I'd think about setting it up, as in having, just putting this down for a second, having 3 quick chucks with plenty of pellets on the feeder, put some bait there, ready for when I drop on it. But again, it's not, oh, that's a bit bigger than it's a nice fish actually. That's that fish. I was just, biggest fish of the day and best looker as well. That's the fish I was talking about just before the tip went round. That's 8 pound, of anyone's money. Okay, I moved, obviously you saw that lovely mirror, 3 quick fish. Because I had another mirror just after that, probably only 3 pound, but still a decent fish. And I just chucked back out and it didn't move. And it's been out 11.5 minutes, which is too long. We've got literally 45 minutes to go. So with the fish, what I'd call a 5-hour session. So what I'm going to do, I really fancy a chuck at that stick. I've just loaded up the medium 32, plenty of pellets on it. So what I'm going to do, because I feel like I need to move on this, so I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 meters, so that when I come back to it, because I'm running out of time, if this is a match now, I feel like I'm running out of time to mess around and sort of waste a chuck. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick up that other rod, I'm going to have a 10-minute chuck to the stick. Hopefully it won't last 10 minutes because a big one will pull the rod in. And then if that doesn't go, straight back to this line. But rather than wasting a chuck that possibly isn't going to go back in the original spot, I'll be in new water again, which, the way things have been going, that's been the secret today to keeping bites coming. That's pretty much bang on the money. Just think bigger fish. I've not tried it all day. Might make no difference whatsoever. That tip might not move. Might get my rod pulled in. It's just something that's worth trying. Sometimes a change of feeder size, up or down, can make a huge difference. That's sitting fine. Tell you what I'll do, I'll preempt fate and get another 32 ready, just in case this goes. Looked like it, from where I am, it went just past that first post, which is about where I wanted to be. It's 32. I'm going to give it 10 minutes. It's just been so apparent that the fish aren't coming to any. They'll eat. If I can get a figure on the fish, they'll eat, but they're not going to come looking for the bait. That's basically the massive thing that's been apparent today. They're just not fussed about searching for bait. It's not like summer, whereas I'd probably in summer I'll be thinking that stick was a #1 spot, bit shallower there, attack it, keep chucking, build the swim up, get loads of bait there, catch really well late on. This time it's just the complete opposite of that. The more you cast, the less you catch, basically. So it's been a case of making every cast count. But I just felt like getting to that time now where there might be an odd big fish around that stick. It's literally a 1 chuck job, because if it doesn't go, I don't feel it's going to go the next chuck or the next chuck. It's just whether a few fish have drifted down along the line of the sticks or just pushed into slightly shallower water, which I'm presuming it is there. But I don't want to waste any more than sort of 10 minutes. I'd like to finish, I'd like to get another 3 fish. Like, and if this went round, maybe 4. But sometimes this time of year, the last hour is not as good as you expect, purely because the temperature starts to drop. Quite often the middle of the day can be as good as anything, particularly when you're fishing feeder, because you can't help but make a bit of disturbance. It's a bit different on the pole, because you can lower your rig in, you can feed a lot quieter, keep everything a lot quieter. Whereas when you're fishing the feeder, you can't help but make a splash when you chuck in. So sometimes you'll find it actually gets hard, particularly this time of year. Your fishing will get harder in the last hour, purely because of the fact, the amount of disturbance that's been created, even though you tried your hardest not to. But anyway, I'm going to give this, I'm a bit disappointed it hasn't gone already, to be fair. I'm going to give it 10. I might give it 8 actually. I'm going to give it, if I haven't had an indication, I'm going to give it 8 and get straight back to the main line. Obviously I'm 2 metres further, I'll be back into brand new water, and I'll be surprised if that doesn't bring me a bite, but you never know. Well, the theme of the day has definitely been new water. I had that one chuck next to the sticks on the medium hybrid, gave it 8 minutes, never even moved, and to be honest, it never looked like moving either. Sometimes you just get a feeling like, once it hadn't gone after 3 minutes, I just felt like it was never going to go. Chucked straight back to the decent line. Obviously I was in new water because I took 2 metres off, if you remember. Got one first chuck, probably £3, and I had to wait for it, I had to wait 7 minutes, and then this is the next chuck, and we've got another one, similar sort of size. Again, I've had to wait 8 minutes for that one, but I've literally got 10 minutes now to finish, and that probably only got half a tail, that one, probably £4, and that'll give me my 3 to finish that I was on about earlier on. So it could be a case of perfect timing, and I mean, them last 2 fish for me sort of justified my decision not to pick the baiting up rod up and try and gamble. I just haven't felt like I needed to. Yeah, things have slowed up, but I just think that's time of day anyway. And if I can nick one this chuck, it'd be a nice way to finish. Make sure that bait's on nice and hard. I'm going to push it slightly, I reckon slightly right if I can. I'm not happy with that. That's the first reel. I said I was going to push it right, it's gone slightly left and it's not hit the clip as hard as I wanted to, and as it's the last chuck, it's too important to leave that. It went in alright, but I need it to be 100% because we're literally running out of time. Well, I'm running out of time. Get it on nice and hard. Gotta make it count. An hour ago I'd have left that because it was in the right area, but I need a quickish bite now, and that wind is just getting back up. That's good. That's going to fly. That's the one. A little bit closer to the stick, slightly right of the platform, seems slightly better. Oh, just seen a fish, first fish, miles out of range, but I've just seen the first fish I've seen all day. Dead in a line where I'm chucking, but about 3/4 of the way towards the other bank. So yeah, I'm not catching that fish, but that's the first fish. And I have been looking, I mean, regular watchers of this will know I'm really keen on like keeping my eyes open, because if you can see fish, particularly this time of year in the cold, and you can cast at them, you can often get a response. You know, I've kept an eye out sort of in that right hand water and to the left, but I've not seen a fish until that one that just jumped out then. So But I think that just shows how cold it is, because this, I know in the summer in particular, and when it's mild, the fish do like to show themselves. I think because it's so shallow, you do often see the fish. But not when it's as cold as this with this wind on it. I don't mind a big wind, but not a big cold wind. So right, the trap's set. According to what I've got 8 minutes to winkle out one more fish, which, if it goes to plan, that'll be about perfect. So next time, obviously I come back, I'll either be playing the last fish of the day or winding in on a downer. Which will it be? Fish on, as they say. Literally, say we're finishing at 3:15. It's 11 minutes past 3. I could probably have another chuck after this, but I'm not going to, because it's always nice to finish on a fish. It just shows the importance. That first chuck might have gone, but I just made sure I got it back out where I wanted it to be. And it all goes back to confidence. I just believe if you're going to leave it out and you really need a fish, it's got to be in the right spot. I don't want to take 2 chucks to get there, but if you do chuck it slightly wrong, then much better to have it back, particularly late in the session. Get it back in the right spot and make sure you fish properly for that last 10 minutes. Little mirror, but a pretty fish to finish on. Pick him up. Perfect hook hold. I'm not lost, which is very rare. I've not lost a single fish all day. Probably a couple of pound. Pretty little fish, but this size of fish is perfect for little feeders and small hook baits. So there you go. I think it's been a pretty decent session, and I think the one thing it has proved how important location is. Getting your timings right, keeping on the move, small feeders, and making sure you're on the fish. So I'm going to get packed up and then we'll have a look at the catch. So there you go, 60-70 pound of carp in what's quite frankly been pretty appalling conditions, both obviously wind and absolutely freezing cold. Proof if you needed it, just how effective fishing little tiny feeders and keeping on the move can be. So that's all from me, and I'll see you next month.